My name is Carey Schafer, and today I will be discussing sea level rise in coastal Mississippi. I am currently working as a Science Policy Fellow with the National Academy's Gulf Research Program. During my time as a fellow, I have been lucky enough to work with the Northern Gulf of Mexico Sentinel Site Cooperative, which is housed here at Mississippi State Coastal Research and Extension Center. Renee Collini, who is listed on this slide with me, is the coordinator of the cooperative and the brains behind what I'll be discussing today. In this talk, I'm going to discuss three main topics. First, what is the Sentinel Site Cooperative? Second, why are our actions important? And third, what actions are we taking to understand risk, communicate risk, and facilitate action around sea level rise resilience? Okay, so first off, who are we? The Sentinel Site Cooperative Program was developed to focus on sea level rise and inundation in the northern Gulf of Mexico. We convene a broad array of partners who work on everything from science to stewardship to make our coastlines more resilient to sea level rise. Generally, we're focused on three main areas that are kind of centered on sea level rise, and those are understanding risk, communicating risk, and facilitating action. But before I get into our work, I really wanted to get into, why you should care. And if you follow any of the news surrounding sea level rise, it's often presented like this. So doomsday scenarios that are kind of a future problem, something that will impact cities in 50 to 100 years, but something that's definitely far beyond our control. And you might be thinking, okay, sea level rise is a future problem. I have other pressing issues to deal with, whether it's bills or kids or work or maybe a global pandemic. But one thing that we hope you understand by the end of this presentation is that sea level rise is actually causing impacts today. And so sea level rise is impacting our coastlines here in the northern Gulf of Mexico in a variety of ways. It is causing erosion, it's increasing the effects of storm surge, causing high tide flooding, and causing infrastructure and stormwater damage. This graph here is from the Dauphin Island tide gauge, which is the closest tide gauge to us here in Biloxi, Mississippi. And what this tide gauge shows us is that over the last 53 years, sea level has risen about 8 inches in coastal Mississippi. And in the next 53 years, we can expect sea levels to rise another 12 inches. So that leads to the question of what can we do? So as I've shown, sea level rise is happening here and now and will only continue to worsen in the future. And I wanted to bring us back to this diagram that focuses on kind of our three aspects that are centered on sea level rise. And these three aspects have really become our three kind of programmatic priorities. And the first that I'll start with is understanding the risk around sea level rise. Now, this is definitely kind of the most technical work that we do. This is where we really dig into the research and say how we can improve scientific outputs so we can have a better understanding of how sea level rise is going to impact our communities and the ecosystem in the northern Gulf of Mexico. Now, understanding risk can really be broken down into larger categories. In order to understand our risk, we need to advance modeling efforts around sea level rise and fill data gaps. And within each of those categories, we have individual projects. And so you can see here just 3 projects that I've given as examples. And after this presentation, if you would like to learn more, there's information on our website. But these projects really aim to answer specific questions. And those questions are things like, how is sea level rise going to impact storm surge, ecosystem services, or local economies? In addition, we want to understand what models are most accurately representing changes to marshes under sea level rise. And in terms of filling data gaps, we want to know right now, how is wetland elevation changing with sea level rise? Now I want to move on to a discussion of communicating risk around sea level rise. And there are a few ways that we can communicate this risk. So one is through things like data viewers and reference sheets. So we've developed a series of local sea level rise 2-pagers, so you can see what is sea level doing at your specific city, at your location along the coast. In addition, there are a number of data viewers that are interactive and will allow you to see how things like sea level is going to change in the future and storm surge. In addition, we know an important part of this is communicating risk within the classroom and to students. So we have also been working to develop a sea level rise in the classroom curriculum that is being taught at high schools in both Mississippi and Alabama, and soon will be expanded to all of the Gulf states. So I wanted to give an example of a data viewer here. This is the Gulf of Mexico surge data viewer, and really what this shows is how we can expect storm surge to change in the future. So I would invite all of you to look some of these up afterwards and kind of just play around with them. These are some photos from our curriculum developed for the sea level rise in the classroom curriculum. And so we brought in teachers who are able to give us feedback on this curriculum, and it is now being beta tested and taught in schools virtually. Luckily, we were able to have some in-person workshops before the pandemic, which is when these photos were taken. Okay, so our final programmatic priority is about facilitating action in communities to make them more resilient to sea level rise. And we do this by providing technical support, by connecting users with potential tools through a service we call Gulf Tree, which is a decision support engine. In addition, we provide cost-benefit analyses to understand how sea level rise is going to impact resources within communities. And we provide them with resources to build more sustainably. In addition, a major portion of our work is helping communities plan for the future. So I wanted to take a minute to really focus on our Resilience to Future Flooding project. And as part of this project, we provided grants to 5 communities across the Northern Gulf, which you can see here listed on this graphic. And specifically today, I'm going to focus on Apalachicola, Florida, which was one of our 5 grant recipients. And so for those of you who might have not been to Apalachicola before, kind of the main draw to this town is their historic downtown. And so the historic downtown is the main economic driver. Unfortunately, it's also very vulnerable to sea level rise. And so it was important for the city to not only preserve the source of revenue within the city, but also kind of preserve the history of the community in this historic downtown. So the grant from the Resilience to Future Flooding project allowed them to bring together a flood-proofing expert along with a historic preservationist who worked on a case-by-case basis to determine how much it would cost to flood-proof 10 structures while also ensuring that historic integrity was maintained. And one thing that I wanted to point out about this project that made it so unique is that adapting historical buildings hasn't really been done a lot before. And so we don't have a lot of knowledge about how to flood historic buildings. And so this project in itself can really be used as a case study, not only for the region, but really across the rest of the country. And it's great that something that's here in our own geography can really be a leader in this resilience action. In addition, this grant really provided the city with an actionable plan to implement future work. And so now the city has plans in place that detail costs, and they've started to pursue funding that would actually, help them to preserve this important part of their community. So with that, I would like to wrap up my presentation. I want to thank you all for the opportunity to present about the important work we're doing. If you all have any questions moving forward, please feel free to reach out to either myself or Renee. You can follow us here on Twitter at the Northern or at ngom_SSC, and all of the resources and projects I discussed today can be found on our website. Thank you very much.